What if I told you that one of the Warriors' biggest promises might be about to leave the franchise? What seemed unthinkable a few seasons ago is now on the table. Jonathan Kuminga, the one who was supposed to be a pillar of the next era in San Francisco, might have his days numbered in the Bay. The story we're going to tell today goes far beyond a simple trade. It represents the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter for three different franchises. The Golden State Warriors transformed over the last decade into the perfect definition of a dynasty in the NBA. Since the rise of Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, the team won 4 championships and established itself as one of the greatest forces in the league. But every dynasty eventually comes to an end, and what we've seen in recent months is exactly that. The beginning of the end of a golden era. While Curry still shines brightly at 37 years old, time forgives no one, and the pieces around him no longer fit as they once did. The franchise that revolutionized basketball with its long-distance shooting game and constant movement now finds itself at a crossroads. When the Warriors selected Kuminga with the 7th overall pick in the 2021 draft, the expectation was that he would become the natural heir to a dynasty, an explosive athlete with impressive physicality and potential to be dominant on both sides of court. It seemed like the perfect plan. While Curry, Thompson, and Green led the team in the present, Kuminga would develop to lead the franchise in the future. And it's in this context that the latest bombshell from the NBA backstage emerges. Jonathan Kuminga, the 22-year-old Warrior star, may be heading to a trade involving 3 teams. A negotiation that reflects not only a philosophical difference between player and coach, but also the urgency of a franchise that feels time running out to take advantage of the final years of one of the greatest players of all time. If you're enjoying this content and want to stay on top of the biggest news and analyses in the NBA, don't waste time. Leave your like right now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to not miss any bombshell from behind the scenes of the league. We're the only channel that brings you this news with this depth and foresight. Our subscribers always know first about the biggest movements in the league, and you won't want to be the last to know about this possible historic trade. Throughout the regular season, we saw signs that something wasn't right between Kuminga and coach Steve Kerr. The young athlete, who was having his best year as a professional with averages of 15.3 points per game, surprisingly sat on the bench during the entire last game of the regular season and in the playing game that the Warriors played. A clear sign that the relationship had soured and that the differences were no longer just backstage rumors. Cameras captured Kuminga's expression of frustration on the bench several times, while Kerr opted for other rotations. It wasn't just a tactical decision, but a sign of distrust in the young player's development. The coach, known for demanding tactical excellence and defensive discipline, apparently wasn't satisfied with Kuminga's evolution in these aspects, despite the player's undeniable offensive growth. According to Tim Kawakami of the San Francisco Standard, the situation between Kuminga and Kerr has reached a point of no return. "I can't see Kuminga and Kerr finding common ground going forward," wrote the journalist. "I can't see the Warriors wanting to pay Kuminga any value close to market value, probably around $28 million per year or more, if the coach doesn't believe in him and the stars aren't sure they want to be on the court with him. I can't see Kuminga want to stay here a second longer than the time necessary to figure out his next team." This statement by Kawakami echoes something we've seen before in the NBA. When the relationship between a young talent and the coach deteriorates, it's usually the player who ends up leaving, especially when the coach has the backing of multiple championships, as is the case with Kerr. The history of sports is full of similar examples, where promises ended up finding their true potential away from the teams that drafted them. Most impactful is that Kuminga's rookie contract expires as soon as the season ends. Although the Warriors have a right to match any offer he receives as a restricted free agent, it seems that management is already looking at sign-and-trade possibilities, a mechanism that would allow them to send a young player to another team in exchange for valuable assets. The Warriors' financial situation isn't the most comfortable either, with the payroll already above the cap and close to the luxury tax limit, making it even more complicated to renew Kuminga's contract with the values he will likely demand in the market. The Warriors hate letting valuable assets go for nothing, and Kuminga certainly is still an asset, complimented Kawakami. Restricted free agency is complicated, so Mike Dunleavy would have to resolve many things to get something valuable in return for Kuminga. The Warriors' general manager is facing his biggest decision since taking position: whether or not to keep a young promise who, despite his potential, doesn't seem to have earned the coach's trust. And it's here that a possible scenario gaining strength behind the scenes comes in. A trade involving three teams: Golden State Warriors, Washington Wizards, and Sacramento Kings. A complex negotiation that would meet the immediate needs of all involved and potentially change the course of these three franchises in the coming years. Let's dive into the details of this potential negotiation that could change the course of three NBA franchises. According to sources close to the situation, the framework of the trade would be as follows. The Warriors would receive Corey Kispert, Jonas Valanciunas, and a 2031 first-round pick protected for the top five, coming from Washington. The Wizards would receive Jonathan Kuminga in a sign-in trade and Malik Monk. The Kings would receive Marcus Smart, Buddy Hield, Saddiq Bey, Tracy Jackson-Davis, and a 2030 first-round pick protected for the top 20, coming from Washington. This would be one of the most complex trades in recent years in the NBA, involving multiple players and draft picks. And to fully understand the potential impact, we need to examine the current situation of each of these teams and what this negotiation would represent for their short and long-term plans. To understand this complex negotiation, we need to analyze what's happening behind the scenes of each team. On the Warriors side, it's evident that something broke in the relationship between Kuminga and coach Steve Kerr. Sources close to the franchise reveal that the frustration is mutual. Kuminga believes he deserves more minutes and a bigger role in the offensive system, while Kerr questions a young player's defensive commitment and his understanding of the collective system that transformed the Warriors into champions. The issue goes beyond statistics. It's not just about Kuminga's 15.3 points per game, but about how those points are scored and how his game fits into the Warrior philosophy. Steve Kerr's system values players who understand when to cut to the basket, when to pass the ball, and especially when to sacrifice individual statistics for the collective good. According to analysts close to the team, Kuminga has not yet been able to demonstrate consistency in these aspects. The ghost of Kevin Durant still hovers over the Bay. Since the superstar's departure, the Warriors have been looking for a worthy substitute, and many believe Kuminga could be that player in the future. But patience, apparently, has run out. With Stephen Curry not getting any younger, the window to win another title is closing rapidly. The question the Warriors management must be asking themselves is it worth waiting for Kuminga to reach his maximum potential, even if it means wasting Curry's last years at his peak? It's also important to remember that the Warriors lost Klay Thompson in the last offseason, one of the pillars of the dynasty, who decided to sign with the Dallas Mavericks after failing to reach an agreement to renew his contract. This departure left a gap not only in three-point shooting, but also in the culture and identity of the team. Losing another talented player without receiving anything in return would be a double blow for the franchise. On the other side, the Wizards have been at rock bottom for years. A historically irrelevant franchise desperately seeking young talent to rebuild its identity. Kuminga represents exactly the type of player who could become the face of the franchise. Athletic, explosive, and with offensive potential to be a star in the league. And most importantly, in Washington, he would have all the opportunities and freedom he didn't have in Golden State. The Wizards are in the midst of a rebuilding process after years of mediocrity. With a promising young core that includes Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, and Keyshawn George, the addition of Kuminga could accelerate this process and give the franchise a clear direction for the future. Washington has struggled to attract big names in the free agent market, so betting on young players with high potential through trades might be their most viable path to relevance. The Kings, meanwhile, are trapped in limbo. After finally breaking their playoff drought 2 seasons ago, the team couldn't take the next step. Domantas Sabonis himself, the team star, declared after the end of the season, "The biggest need is a point guard, that's for sure." And that's exactly what they would get in this trade. Marcus Smart, NBA champion and former Defensive Player of the Year. Sacramento has struggled with inconsistency since De'Aaron Fox's departure. The team has good offensive players in Sabonis, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan, but desperately lacks a maestro who can orchestrate that talent and, mainly, bring defensive intensity. Smart, even with his recent injury history, would be an addition that would meet exactly these needs. Additionally, Buddy Hield's return to Sacramento would be an interesting chapter. The shooter had his best years with the Kings before being traded to the Pacers, and his style of play would still fit well alongside Sabonis. Hield's return could add the floor spacing the team so badly needs to allow Sabonis to operate more efficiently in the paint. The motivations are clear, but what about the obstacles? The biggest one is risk. For the Warriors, betting on Kispert and Valanciunas means recognizing that the cycle of dominance is coming to an end. Kispert is a great shooter, but far from having the ceiling that Kuminga possesses. Valanciunas, at 33 years old, would only be a temporary solution. The real question for Golden State is whether they could extract the most from Kispert in the system that transformed players like Gary Payton II and Otto Porter Jr. into valuable pieces during the 2022 championship campaign. Valanciunas, in turn, would bring a presence in the paint that the Warriors haven't had since the days of Andrew Bogut, but his style of play based on post-ups could conflict with the philosophy of fast play and long-distance shooting that characterizes a team. The 2031 first-round pick is a valuable asset, but also speculative. The Warriors will be betting that the Wizards will continue to be a bottom-of-the-table team 6 years from now, which is not guaranteed if Washington's young core develops as expected. For the Wizards, the risk lies in paying $28 million per year for a player who, despite immense potential, still needs to evolve a lot to justify that value. What if Kuminga doesn't develop a consistent shot? What if his defensive deficiencies persist? In a small market like Washington, a wrong contract can compromise years of planning. Additionally, the Wizards will be giving up 2 future first-round picks, precious assets for a team in rebuilding. The bet is that Kuminga will be worth more than any player they could select in those positions. But the history of draft picks in the NBA is full of surprises, both positive and negative. As for the Kings, Smart has been struggling with injuries in recent seasons, appearing in only 54 games in the last 2 years. Furthermore, he has never been a reliable shooter, which could complicate floor spacing alongside Sabonis. The question for Sacramento is whether they are willing to bet on Smart's health to solve their point guard problem. Another complicating factor is locker room chemistry. Buddy Hield didn't leave Sacramento on the best terms in his first stint, and reintegrating him into the roster could bring unforeseen challenges. The same goes for Jackson Davis, who would have to find a space in a rotation that already has Sabonis as an undisputed starter. But what if it worked? How would these teams look? What would the future of these 3 franchises be if this negotiation actually materialized? The Warriors could add depth to the roster while maintaining flexibility for the future. Kispert, at 25 years old, still has room for growth, and his three-point shooting 38.2% career would be valuable alongside Curry. Valanciunas would be a force in the paint that the team hasn't had since the days of Andrew Bogut. Imagine a lineup with Curry, Brandon Podziemski, Kispert, Draymond Green, and Valanciunas. A formation that combines Curry's offensive genius, Draymond's game intelligence, Kispert's efficient shooting, and Valanciunas' physical presence in the paint. This core, complemented by players like Moses Moody and Andrew Wiggins, could keep the Warriors competitive while initiating a gradual transition to the post-Curry era. Additionally, the 2031 first-round pick would give the Warriors a valuable asset for the future, potentially during the first years after Curry's retirement. This pick could be used to select the next face of the franchise, or as a bargaining chip to acquire another established player should the opportunity arise. The Wizards would finally have a young base to build a future. Kuminga would join Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, and Keyshawn George, forming one of the most interesting young cores in the league. With Jordan Poole, Chris Middleton, and Malik Monk complementing the young players, Washington could finally take a leap in competitiveness. The addition of Kuminga and Monk would bring not only talent, but also relevance to a franchise that has long lived in the shadow of the big teams in the Eastern Conference. Kuminga could finally take on a role of first offensive option that he so desires, with the freedom to develop all facets of his game without the pressure of competing for an immediate title. The combination of Kuminga and Sarr would form one of the most athletic and versatile frontcourt duos in the league, with potential to physically dominate most opponents. Meanwhile, Monk would bring shooting and playmaking off the bench, essential elements for any competitive team in modern NBA. The Kings would solve their point guard problem with Smart, whose defensive capability and leadership will be welcome on a team that suffers tremendously on defense. Buddy Hield's return would bring long-distance shooting, and Jackson Davis would be a younger option to alternate with Sabonis. Sacramento would finally have a true floor general who could maximize the offensive talent of the roster. Smart wouldn't need to be the main scoring threat with Levine, DeRozan, and Sabonis on the team, allowing to focus on being the offensive maestro and offensive anchor that the Kings so badly need. The addition of Saddiq Bey, when recovered from his anterior cruciate ligament injury, would give the Kings another versatile option in positions 3 and 4, while Jackson Davis would bring youth and athleticism to the front court rotation. With these pieces, Sacramento could finally build a balanced roster, capable of seriously competing in the playoffs of the fierce Western Conference. The statistics don't lie. Kuminga has increased his offensive production each season in the NBA, 9.3 points in 2022-23, 11.1 in 2023-24, and 15.3 in 2024-25. His efficiency has also improved, reaching 52.9% of field goal attempts this season. The potential is undeniable. The problem? Those minutes when he's not on the court. Those moments when Kerr prefers other players. Those frustrated looks from the bench. Kuminga's development has been remarkable in several aspects. His athletic ability has always been evident, but his technical evolution deserves highlight. His mid-range shooting efficiency has risen considerably, and his finishing close to the rim is among the best in the league for players at his position. Defensively, there are still gaps to be filled, but the potential is undeniable with his wingspan and athletic explosion. In Washington, Kuminga would have the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of other young talents who found their place after changing teams. Players like Brandon Ingram, D'Angelo Russell, and even Andrew Wiggins benefited enormously from a new environment and new responsibilities. It wouldn't be surprising to see Kuminga reach even higher levels with the Wizards jersey. On the other hand, the Warriors would follow the path that many sports dynasties end up following, recognizing and end a cycle and starting to prepare the ground for the next one. Keeping Curry competitive in his final years would be a priority, but without completely mortgaging the future. The addition of Kispert and a first-round pick would be a middle ground between immediate competitiveness and long-term planning. And for the Kings, this trade would represent a bold move to escape the limbo of mediocrity in which they are trapped. Without first-round picks in the next drafts due to previous trades, the only way out for Sacramento is through smart trades. Smart may not be the perfect solution, but it would be a step in the right direction to build a consistent playoff team around Sabonis. And now, what do you think? Are the Warriors making a mistake by giving up on Kuminga so early? Or is this the right move to renew the roster around Curry while he's still at his peak? Leave your comment below. The debate is open, and we want to know your opinion. This is possibly the biggest decision the Warriors will have to make since Kevin Durant's departure. We're talking about a player many compare to Jaylen Brown and his potential, an athlete capable of changing the course of a franchise. Will the Warriors regret this decision in the coming years, as happened with teams that gave up two early-on talents like Chauncey Billups, Victor Oladipo, and so many others? Or is Kuminga just another case of potential that will never fully materialize? And if you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. We're working 24 hours a day to bring the hottest NBA information directly to you. Next week, we'll bring an exclusive analysis of the Lakers' plans for the offseason and how LeBron James is influencing the franchise's decisions. Additionally, we'll have exclusive interviews with league scouts who closely follow the Warriors season and can bring new insights into the Kuminga case. Don't miss out on the movements that will define the future of the league. Activate the bell to receive notifications every time we publish a new video. Your likes and subscriptions are fundamental for us to continue producing quality content. This is a situation that can change at any moment. The pieces are moving behind the scenes, and you'll only find this in-depth coverage here. We'll be the first to inform you when and if this trade materializes. And if Kuminga's destiny is really far from the Bay, remember, you heard it here first. A new configuration is about to emerge in the NBA. 3 franchises, 3 distinct realities, 3 visions of the future. A trade that could redefine the Warriors' legacy, give new life to the Wizards, and take the Kings out of limbo. This is the NBA, unpredictable, exciting, and always evolving. And we'll be here to document each chapter of this story that's just beginning.